Welcome to Sports Charlotte, the podcast about sports in Charlotte. My name is Herb White. I'm editor-in-chief of the Charlotte Post. And to my right, if you're watching the video,
it's to his left. His right, your left.
Is the chief contrarian around here.
Oh, man. Now that's our colleague, Alex Bass. That is his coined term. He is the contrarian. But Cameron Williams, staff writer, Hornets aficionado, Charlotte 49ers aficionado, and recently, apparently, high school football aficionado.
It's good to be an aficionado at something.
A lot of
You're an
things.
aficionado at a bunch of stuff.
And apparently drinking up all the office's coffee.
These things happen too. But it is Thursday, January 16, 2025. Plenty of stuff to talk about, starting with the Charlotte Hornets, who, in the midst of winning 2 out of their last 3 games, they're also out here getting a head start on the trade deadline shopping season.
Do you think this was a gamble? Okay, well, let's preface it this way. They are sending Nick Richards and a second-round pick to Phoenix for Josh Okogie, 6'4" small forward, and 3 second-round picks, 2 this year and 1 in the way distant future, 2031.
Yeah.
So, do you think this was a bit of a gamble, given Mark Williams' health? Had a really good last couple games. I mean, 31 and 13 last night, really played well.
Mm-hmm.
The core 4, I don't even know who coined that term, but some media members coined the term core 4, it being Ball, Bridges, Miller, and Williams. They all played well last night. But given Williams' history with injuries and missing time,
well, they're all injury prone except for,
even Miller missed some time.
Yeah, that's true.
But my point being is, obviously Williams has missed the most time, numerically, games-wise, and just minutes overall. Do you think this was a bit of a gamble in that, okay, well, Richards was a pretty solid backup for us, and when Williams wasn't able to play him, he produced at a pretty decent level for us. Mm-hmm. I know prior to starting up the podcast, we talked about Diabate a little bit and how maybe they're just trying to foster him, kind of get him acclimated to be in that reserve role, be that second backup center. So take it away. What's your thoughts on this? Is it a gamble? Is it not a gamble? Do you like the trade? Do you not like the trade?
I think it's a trade that needed to be made. They probably could have gotten more if they just held out a week or 2 longer. Because the closer you get to the trade deadline, you might find a partner who's willing to give up more. In other words, they get desperate. And in desperate times, you're bound to do some things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. But the Hornets at least had enough assets at center to feel comfortable making that trade. Mark Williams is without a doubt the best center on the team. He's good on both ends of the floor and certainly gives you a presence defensively in terms of blocking shots and altering and things that you ask your bigs to do. He's your clear-cut number 1 when he's healthy. Nick Richards, not quite the offensive force. And maybe the way Phoenix is looking at it is, even if he's not in that boat, he's better than what they had previous. So it makes total sense for them, where you can get some productivity out of the 5 spot. And they are way down in the NBA rankings in terms of productivity out of the center position. So it makes total sense for them. And for the Hornets, it makes sense from the standpoint of everything being even. Moussa Diabate, you may not get as much for him, but he may have the better upside in that he can be developed. He certainly competes on the defensive end. He grabs up rebounds like they're going out of business. Yeah. And even though he's a little undersized at 6'9", I think that he can still be a really good defensive player when it comes to that. Offensively, you're not going to get a whole bunch out of him right now, but that can be massaged and maximized to kind of cover up that reality. So for the Hornets, I can see why they wanted to do it. You've got 3 centers, 48 minutes into a game.
Yeah, you're not gonna play all of them.
Yeah, so you got to give minutes somewhere, and 3 dudes soaking up those minutes isn't gonna work. So what can you get for one? It made sense for Nick Richards to be the one to go westward in this instance.
Yeah, and one thing Peterson said, he was available to the media last night, is he brought up Diabate and how he felt comfortable with the depth at center, trading away Nick and having Musa there. He said even though he's comfortable with that, there is going to be times where they play small ball. It'd be really nice if Grant Williams, when they got hurt, you play small ball, have him at the 5, because he's proven he can play the 5. Even in that kind of small ball lineup, but says nonetheless he's still comfortable doing that, and says they've even received calls about other players, including those core 4 players. He said they're not going to do anything that's going to compromise the team's future, but the right price and the right player and the right amount of draft picks, who knows who's going to be traded.
And you were talking about a team that's 8 and whatever they are.
Well, he brought up the injury bug. He said they hadn't had really time to gel, but these last couple of games we've kind of seen that come to fruition. I mean, Mark Williams tore it up last night. Really, the last 2 games he's played really well, but man, 31 and 13 from a guy who just recently, I mean, he's been out for a year, and he's tearing it up.
He's playing well, no doubt about it.
I think if he stays healthy, I hate, we sound like broken records because we talk about all the time, staying healthy. But if they do, they've proven they are a formidable team. And I said in a story that I wrote recently, a healthy Hornets team is not a bad NBA team. I said at the start of the year, if this team stays healthy, I think they could be a play-in, possibly playoff team. They look at when they're all on the floor together. I'll say that. When they're not,
they're 8 and 28. Which is what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that the trade made sense. You want to be able to grab some capital when it comes to draft picks. But they're all second rounders. How much value can you package with that when you're looking for long-term answers and stability? I don't know. But if they had been able to swing a different type of deal, if they just waited longer, who knows what a Phoenix or some other team that is in that 9 through 11 spot out west or 9 through 11 in the east would have given up to get that kind of help.
Hypothetically, LA comes calling.
Which one?
The relevant one.
Oh.
The Lakers.
Okay.
Well, I don't think they'd want James Harden, but anyway. The Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Say they ask for Miles Bridges and 2 seconds for Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura.
No.
Really?
No.
Really?
No.
You got a guy that can step right in. So, I mean, LaMelo's going to be your point.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Reeves has kind of ran the point for the Lakers, and he's done really well. I mean the man's averaging 8 or 9 assists here lately. So, he can fill that role. But sharpshooter. I mean, I like Josh Green, but he's clearly better than Josh Green.
Mm-hmm.
And you replace Bridges with maybe not as flashy of a scorer, but a guy that can be a knockdown 3-point shooter. Proved last night he can beat people off the dribble drive. You wouldn't get Bridges in 2 seconds for Hachimura and Reeves.
If you convert those second rounders into a first, now you might get my attention.
Well, no, you're saying trade away a first-round pick and Bridges for those 2 players?
No. I'm saying the Lakers would need to
to throw on a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean, you got to sweeten that pie. I mean,
and that's where trade negotiations come into play. But
right.
I'm just saying, I personally see, and I mean, I'm not a Lakers fan. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan for crying out loud. But when I see the production that Reeves can give you on a night in, night out basis, can play point guard if you want to give LaMelo some breathing time on the bench, or just, I like that a lot.
Well, but also look at the underpinnings of these two teams, and would those guys from the Lakers be able to replicate that in Charlotte when you don't have LeBron James
Or Anthony
and Anthony Davis? It's like, okay,
that's a good point, because
you're going to swap them out for LaMelo and Brandon Miller, huh?
Well, that's a good point, because a lot of Reeves assists, here you go, AD, just throw it up in the paint, or LeBron alley oop, LeBron corner three. Yeah,
and that's what I would say. Nah, unless the Lakers were willing to throw in a first.
Yeah, but where's their first going to be this year? I mean, middle of the pack, maybe towards the bottom half. I just don't.
Maybe, but that's a more tangible asset, I think, than a second.
I mean, I was just saying 2 players for Bridges in a second round pick. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, but regardless, the Hornets have, unless they swing a trade between now and the Martin Luther King Day game, we're going to see what this reconfigured or slightly tweaked Hornets roster looks like and what they'll do. They have one more road game, Chicago, and then they're back home for Monday. It'll be interesting to see what this group looks like. Now, can they finish by Monday with 4 out of 5 wins? Now, that might give us a better opportunity to see exactly what is capable.
It's going to be really interesting to me to see if they can match Chicago's pace. I know they've played already this season, but now that they've got their full complement of players back, let's see the youngsters of the Hornets run up and down the floor with the Bulls. I mean, the Bulls, in games that the Bulls play, if you're not taking the over, you're crazy. They're up and down the floor running. Zach
They have a lot of pace.
Kobe White, and which is odd to me because you got a center like Nikola Vucevic, and he is about as fast as the snail on the sidewalk. But they run up and down.
He's a real anchor, and not in a good way.
Well, he can anchor
like
the paint.
An anvil.
He can anchor the paint. I mean, that would be a really fun matchup to watch. Him and Mark Williams, because clearly athleticism-wise, Mark's way better. But Vooch just has a way of getting rebounds. He's got a way of altering shots. He's got that slow, methodical, little slow as molasses jump hook that finds a way over outstretched arms of defenders. So that'll be fun to watch. And then, I don't know who. Are they going to match Kobe White on LaMelo? Or are they going to put Levine, who's, in my opinion, the Bulls' best defender, on LaMelo?
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting game to watch.
Well, in the game that they played here previously went to overtime, and for all practical purposes, the game should have been over in regulation, but Miles Bridges hits this miraculous 3, they go to overtime and run out of steam. But I think, again, with this reconfigured roster, you added somebody who, I guess they're trying to get him to fit somewhere as a small forward, big guard, whatever. Yeah. And how that affects pace and offense, because the Hornets are still not, by any stretch, an offensive juggernaut. They're not going to overwhelm you with getting the ball into the hole.
117 last night, it was a good sign. There for a stretch, it was like an act of Congress to get this team to go over 100 points.
Well, yeah.
An injured Hornets team.
Yeah. So we'll see how that all turns out.
We'll see at the Spectrum Center Monday at noon.
Noon
most
time.
of corporate America doesn't get MLK Day off and be working. We're going to see a game against the Hornets with the Luka Doncic-less Mavericks team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a homecoming for P.J. Washington, in a way.
He's been there, done that. He was here last year.
Yeah, well, okay. But
We can look forward to that turkey sandwich.
You and your turkey sandwiches at
Spectrum
Center.
They're good, okay? Anyway.
I'll take your word for it.
You should try it on Monday.
Perhaps I shall.
Use that meal voucher next time.
Well, okay. Yeah, sometimes you just have to go there and try it for yourself. All right, so that's the NBA. You did a story this week on Jupiter Wilson, who is the new football coach over at Garinger High School. And for those of you who may not be that familiar with high school sports in Mecklenburg County, Garinger is the Washington Generals to just about everybody else's Harlem Globetrotters when it comes to all manner of sports. But Jupiter Wilson, who has won in other places, is now the head coach. And it's an interesting story.
Yeah, that was about the nicest way you could have put that.
Thank you.
and look, I talked to a lot of people for this story. I think I did a decent job with it. I must say so myself.
You did.
Jupe's been a friend of mine for a while now. I've covered him. He was at Hickory Ridge prior to taking the Garinger job. And Hickory Ridge has had their fair share of struggles in recent years, just due to various issues, lack of interest in coming out for football, and then the ever-present transfer portal, which
is a thing in high school now.
Not a lot of people want to claim that it exists, but I mean it exists. And in Cabarrus County, where they make it easier for kids to do this, because all the Cabarrus County schools have their own STEM program. So if you want to do biology, you can go to Northwest Cabarrus, or if you want to do aviation, you can go to West Cabarrus, and J.M. Robinson has their own specialty, and Hickory Ridge. So they make it easy, and you can, as long as you can provide transportation for yourself and you don't have to have a bus, you can go to any high school you want to. Play sports, nonetheless, for any high school you want to. And so it is really taking a toll on Hickory Ridge. J.M. Robinson was really good this last year, but a lot of the players were on Hickory Ridge's roster 2 seasons ago. So there was that aspect of it, but he did really bring Hickory Ridge to prominence. In 2021, they won their conference, were relatively high seed in the playoffs. I think they lost to Chambers, but that was back still when Chambers was competing for state championship. Mm-hmm. So, not a bad loss there, but they won the conference championship. He was nominated for the NFL's High School Coach of the Year, and that's countrywide. So, clearly, his resume speaks for itself. He's coached in Virginia. He's even coached in Charlotte before as an OC and DC at Chambers, and he was O-line coach at Monroe. So, he knows the area, and he knows the struggles that Garinger's faced. What was the stat here? In 10 years, 6 different coaches, and the same number of wins to match.
That's a lot of winless seasons up in there.
22 points was scored this year by the Garinger Wildcats.
Not per game.
I mean, there was
for the season.
And so, I mean, Garinger's in that Southwest Conference, and Independence. I don't think Independence had a game other than in the playoffs where they scored less than 22. So the struggles are
real,
are ever present.
Mm-hmm.
But Wilson, who actually turned this job down after the first interview, and after it was extended to him, he planned on joining Sam Griner, coach of West Charlotte. He planned on joining their staff, and he just said something didn't sit right well with him. He thought that, call it divine intervention, but he felt called to that Garinger job. He's like, I felt called to go and to lead the kids, and we're talking about a team that had 42 players on the roster. That doesn't necessarily mean a lot of them showed up each and every day either. And when I talked with Brian Bork, the AD over at Garinger, he's like, Jupiter really just checked all the boxes that we were looking for. We wanted someone that was committed to coming in there and not ready to jump ship after one bad season, because let's face it, they've had a lot of bad seasons. He wants someone that's going to get in there and try to turn this thing around. And, I mean, Jupe was at Hickory Ridge since 2019, so I mean, he's been there a while. And he was actually there longer. He was one of Sam Griner's top assistants there when Griner was the head coach. So it is an interesting story, and I think he just wants the community to give him some time, to show a little grace and understand that this team ain't going to win 5 games next year. It's just not going to happen.
Start at the basics.
Win a game.
One.
Yeah. Win a game. I mean, let's get a game under their belt. He's going to be the weightlifting coach, so obviously he's kids that he comes in contact with, he's like, hey, come out for football. Trying to curate the interest, because at a place like Garinger, where across all sports there's not been a lot of stability with head coaches, football being the worst one, they're just hitting a lot of interest. There hasn't been, and you see with and I'm not going to say caliber, just the stature of players that they've had. I mean, they've had a lot of smaller players in the past. Guys on the offensive line that are barely pushing 200 pounds. I mean, that's not heavy.
Not good.
So we'll see what time does and how much time it does take. But he plans on being there for the long haul and really trying to get this thing turned around. I mean, competing for state championships, maybe not. At least winning and being competitive, that's his goal. And he's just really wanting the kids to understand that he's there for them, not for his own benefit.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one thing I would imagine that he will get is plenty of runway. If he sticks around, he will get the runway, because as bad as Garinger football has been in the last 20 years or so, it wasn't always that way. I mean, there was a time when Garinger, not just football, but Garinger athletics, period, was some of the best in the county. It's produced NFL players. David Waymer, Dwight Clark, anybody? Now, granted, that was way back when, and that's still part of the school's legacy. Basketball, very competitive, and so it's only in recent decades that Garinger has fallen off. But if he can go in and convince folks not just to show up, but to trust.
Yeah.
And trust that Garinger, it may not be special within 3 or 4 years of your time there and when you graduate, but you can put in the building blocks where it can really flower and succeed and thrive. That may be the hardest job that he has. It won't be the X's and O's. It'll be the Jimmys and Joes in terms of getting them out there and playing. But we've seen it happen at other downtrodden programs. And Exhibit A is Sam Briner, where he took a pair of downtrodden programs and turned them into state champions. So we will get to see a couple of things. A, how good a recruiter Jupiter Wilson is. Not just all the kids in Mecklenburg County, but starting with the kids at Garinger.
Yeah.
How many can he get onto the field in his first year or 2 or 3? And then the next thing will be, how good a coach is he? Can he actually get them to a position where they can score more than 22 points in a season? Can they win a game or 2? And then can they start competing, maybe not for conference titles right off the top, but at least be in position to say, well, we can get a lower seed into the playoffs, that kind of thing. So it'll be an interesting scenario for him. And I hope he does well, because, Garinger has been mocked and everything else when it comes to sports.
Other than
and
soccer.
Everything else. Well, yeah, soccer, they're pretty good at that. But everything, as we all know, people talk about football. People talk about basketball. And if he can get some results with Garinger football, it'll be a heck of a story.
It's one thing when because I talked to Sam, knowing their long-standing relationship, and I asked him, I was like, as a coach who's turned 2 teams around, when you look at this, how big of a task is it? And he was honest. He was like, this is a bigger task than turning Harden and West Charlotte around. He's like 25 years, 14 winless seasons. And out of the other ones, I mean, we're talking about maybe seasons where they won 1 or 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be a task, and it's one that when I asked Jupiter about it, there was nothing negative. And when you talk to coaches that have just taken a job, yeah, you're not gonna hear a lot of negative, but I didn't tell him this. I was almost asking questions, trying to get him to say, this is gonna be tough. It's gonna be really tough. There was so much optimism just radiating from him, and it was almost like, look, I get where this team's at, but it's nothing that I'm not ready to try to, or it's nothing I'm unequipped to try to tackle. And so, look, if you go into a Garinger job coaching football with optimism, that's a good start.
Well, but we've also seen that job beat people down. So
fair enough.
So it's great that he's enthusiastic, but reality can slap the taste out of anybody's mouth.
And hear me out on this. I think Hickory's last year, winless, I'm not going to make any predictions. I think they would have beat Garinger. But I think the last couple of seasons have kind of given Jupe that beat down that you referenced about being a coach at Garinger. So I think he's had that experience of late, and so he knows that feeling. And so if he knows that it's going to be hard and he's still willing to accept it, then, like I said, optimism, step one.
Fair enough. August is not that far off.
No, it's not. I told you, but I'm going to have to get out to a Garinger game. I've been to Garinger a few times for some basketball. I've never been to a Garinger football game.
Really?
Really, really. I know one time a friend of mine, Steve Lytle, who contributes over at the Observer, he went out to Garinger and East Meck. And at the time, it was a battle of 2 winless teams. And he wrote that story in such a way. He talked about all the penalties and just the negatives of it. And me, I want to look at this as like, okay, these teams, they don't really have a chance. No one gives them a chance. And so, as a kid, put yourself in these kids' shoes. If all the people that are there covering you are there just because you don't have a chance, then how's that going to make you feel? It's going to basically reinforce those thoughts in your mind, like, we don't have a chance. Go out there with a different perspective and think, okay, we're here covering the kids because, we're shining a light on them, and not, in a way that's so negative. I think that's all Garinger hears, that's all Harding's heard for the last little bit. They hear the negative. They know it's negative, okay? But maybe try to put a positive twist on it. And I think that's what Jupiter's going to try to do here. So yeah, August isn't too far away, and it'll be interesting to get out there and see a game.
And again, if he can score points in the Garinger community, that's the important step. You got to be able to convince those students, their parents, or guardians, or whomever, that this is worth buying into, and it's going to be special. And all you have to do is just give us some time and give us your best effort, and we'll make something of it. And that's the only way it works. Get
them excited for it, because listen, I've talked with a handful now of Garinger alums, and a direct quote from someone, okay? I mean, I'm not going to mention names, but I've heard from someone that legitimately said, I'm kind of embarrassed to be a Garinger alum because of how bad they are at all their sports.
That happens.
But listen, I mean, I went to Northwest Cabarrus. We're not great at much either. But, I mean, it's your alma mater. You still...
Absolutely.
There's still got to be some sense of pride. And it's like, hey, I went to school here. I put in my work, and I graduated from here. I'm proud to be a Charlotte 49er, despite their struggles in some sports. Like, I don't think... if it's that bad, there needs to be a cultural shift. Mm-hmm. Because if you're that embarrassed of where you went to school... I just think there needs to be something to change.
It is going to take more than one person.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. I mean, Jupiter Wilson can go in, and he's got grandiose plans to return the shine to Garinger football. That's great, because at one point in time in history, Garinger was the bee's knees, the bomb, and all that other stuff. And it is not that now. But you have to be able to start somewhere. And so I tip my cap to him, imaginary it may be. Go out there, sell it, and you have nothing to lose because you're starting with a blank slate. Yeah. So that's the plus. The negative is you still have doubters out there who believe the last 25 years is going to be the next 25 years. So there is that.
Save me a spot on the sidelines, Jupe.
Well, early in the season, you will have some. Now, if they get good, it may be a bandwagon. There may not be room. But first things first, let's see what he comes up with starting in August.
Hey, it's the people that were there when they were nothing that are going to have their VIP spot right on the sideline.
Well, I'm all for that.
That's why my boy Sam Griner has the soul food truck ready for me every time I go to Dove Seat.
Yeah, you can. We will make VIP out of you everywhere you go.
That's right, except the Hornets because they just give us turkey sandwiches.
Well, yeah, they treat us like regular folks. But anyway,
back to the old round ball that bounces on the hard court.
Yes, Charlotte 49ers, the women's team is scuffling along. No great shakes as of yet. I know Coach Tamika Reed came in with a whole lot of fanfare, especially from this corner of the media ecosystem in Charlotte. And the grind is on. And you went to a game this week to check them out.
Last night, watched them face ECU. Led 35-34 at halftime. Lost 72-65. This team has made progress.